My boss fired me for refusing to work on my vacation. He didn't know I was the only one with the admin passwords to the offshore servers where they kept their financial backups. I knew something was off when the hotel concierge handed me a folded note from the front desk. No sender. Just 3 words scribbled in aggressive all caps. Check your email. I hadn't touched my phone in 4 days. Not out of negligence, but necessity. It was the first time I'd let myself be gone. No pings. No slacks. No Carter breathing down my neck at 11:47 p.m. asking if I could just triple-check the security protocols one more time. My dad's ashes were finally where they belonged, drifting across the cliffs of Big Sur, right where he asked in that wrinkled will. I was grieving. Yeah. But more than that, I was finally still. So, yeah, when I turned my phone back on and saw the nuclear mushroom cloud of red notification dots, calls from HR, emails from Carter, Slack threads labeled urgent, 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 my stomach dropped. Then I opened the email. Subject line, termination of employment effective immediately. The bastard fired me over email while I was on a bereavement-approved vacation. Not even a call. Just a cold, typed-out thanks for your service and a legally worded kick in the ribs. I was sitting poolside holding a pina colada. Suddenly, my entire 10-year career evaporated between sips of pineapple slush. Now I know what you're thinking. Oh God, here comes another I got fired on vacation sob story. But no. This ain't that. This is the story of how I let a bunch of finance bro suits strangle themselves with their own arrogance. But before I drop you into that bonfire, can I ask a tiny favor? Most folks binge these stories like Netflix, but never hit that little subscribe button. If you're one of the 95% ghosts listening without committing, do me a solid. Help me hit my first 10,000 subscribers. I promise you, the revenge arc's worth it. Anyway, where were we? Right, Carter? Mister, we value our people who once said during a town hall that family comes first. Apparently, unless that family just died and you're trying to honor their memory, then it's, hey, Monica, you log into the Singapore Mirror servers and run a diagnostic. It'll only take 10 minutes. I'd said no, kindly, respectfully. I even included a stupid smiley face to soften the boundaries. Hey, Carter, I'm actually off-grid this week to honor my dad's passing. I'll be back online next Monday. Guess that smiley didn't land because 32 hours later, I was persona non grata. IT had revoked my access by the time I checked. Internal Slack workspace deactivated. Work email, locked out. Final paycheck, pending HR review. But here's the part Carter didn't understand, and neither did the flailing IT interns he kept around like backup dancers. See, I had built their offshore backup infrastructure. A whole redundant lattice of encrypted data mirrors across Luxembourg, Iceland, and one tiny server farm in Nova Scotia that still runs on Linux builds old enough to drink. It was efficient, cheap, decentralized, exactly how Carter wanted it. No centralized credential storage. No shared admin pool. Too expensive, he said. Just give one lead sysadmin root access and call it a day. And guess who that sysadmin was? I didn't respond to the firing email, not because I was afraid. I just needed a minute. I lay there on the lounger watching the sun turn my cocktail straw into a lava stick, made a list in my head. Export credential logs, screenshot audit trails, backup redundancy maps, timeline of project delivery for the offshore stack, confirmed Carter's email where he explicitly declined Duluth Protocol by the time I finished my drink. I had a plan. Not revenge. Not yet. Just documentation. But in the quiet of my grief and the salt in the air, something settled inside me. A kind of peace I hadn't felt in a decade. Carter had yanked the cord, sure, but he'd done it blindfolded with no idea it was wrapped around his own neck. And me, I was finally unplugged for once in my goddamn life. The email read like it was written by a corporate AI trying to sound human. Something about restructuring the org chart for optimized agility and non-essential roles being dissolved to increase shareholder value. Then, like a cherry on top of a flaming dog turd sundae ended with, "We wish you the best in your future endeavors." CC'd to HR. BCC'd to God knows who else. I stared at the screen blinking behind my sunglasses as 2 kids cannonballed into the resort pool and splashed chlorine all over my Kindle. It was a surreal kind of rage. Muted, delayed, almost clinical. Like finding out your house burned down in a neighborhood flyer. I didn't even scream, didn't toss the phone, just laid it flat on the patio table, took a long sip of my pina colada, and let the silence crawl into my bones. Carter hadn't called, hadn't scheduled a meeting. No Slack ping. Just an email like I was a gym membership he forgot to cancel before the 30-day trial ended. After 10 goddamn years, I sat there watching the condensation roll down my glass and thought, okay. You want clean breaks, Carter? Let's talk scissors. First thing I did until inventory. Not grief, not anger. Pure protocol. Who else had the passwords? No one. That was the point. Were there backup access logs? No. Not under his budget. Could they brute force their way in? Not without tripping 3 failsafes and a remote kill switch I personally designed after Carter said, "Let's cut costs on third-party security." I'd built those offshore servers from scratch, not metaphorically. I literally flew to Nova Scotia to install the hardware myself because Carter didn't want to pay local contractors. Iceland was done via VPN relay because their firewall rules were stricter than his ethics. And Luxembourg, that one was a favor from an old college friend who owed me a favor. All 3 nodes encrypted, all 3 synced nightly, and all 3 authenticated by keys stored nowhere except the encrypted token in my personal obike, which was currently tucked into my luggage next to a black dress I'd worn to scatter my father's ashes. That was Carter's non-essential role. I tried to give him redundancy. I'd pitched shared key backups. I proposed offboarding templates and system handoffs. Every time, too expensive or you're overcomplicating things, Monica. We need agility, not bureaucracy. No one remembered that agility snaps when stretched too far. I didn't act that day, even reply to the email. I let the silence fester like a sealed Tupperware full of raw shrimp in the back seat of a locked car. Because Carter thought silence meant surrender. What it really meant was I was watching. I ordered another drink, tipped the waiter in cash, and leaned back as the sun dipped behind the palms. My grief was still there like a sleeping dog curled up at the edge of my ribcage, but next to it, something else was waking up. Not anger. Not yet. Just clarity, cold, clean, and patient. Let 'em tug at the threads. Let the server start their slow, quiet death spiral. Let Carter CC the universe. I wouldn't lift a finger. Not until they realized what finger they were missing. The Monday I was supposed to return to work, I woke up to the sound of waves and the distinct urge to cause a mild corporate extinction. Instead, I opened my laptop and did something radical. I was professional. Object line, formal offboarding support credentials and infrastructure transition plan. Body text, clear, courteous, and bullet-pointed within an inch of its life. I detailed everything they'd need to smoothly take over my infrastructure work: server maps, SSH protocol notes, credential architecture, 2-factor configuration warnings. I even offered a 30-minute handover Zoom free of charge. I didn't do it for Carter. I did it for the legal timestamp. Reply, not from HR, not from legal, not even a middle finger emoji from Carter, just radio silence like my email had been shot into the sun. Back at HQ, I imagine the IT department standing around like Sims in a house fire. And by IT, I mean Bryce, a junior admin fresh off his CompTIA cert and still misspelling kernel in Slack. He once thought SSH was that thing we use to connect to SharePoint. Right? Hey, he wore a Patagonia vest and played pickleball with Carter. So, obviously, he was management material. Bryce tries logging into the offshore mirrors. First, Luxembourg. Timeout. Then Iceland. Connection refused. Nova Scotia, denied with a failover lockout warning. The servers were doing exactly what they were designed to do when an unverified request came from an unknown key. Bryce, in all his caffeinated glory, tells Carter it's probably just a DNS issue and starts rebooting the local router. And Carter buys it, not because it made sense, but because the alternative meant admitting I mattered. That maybe, just maybe, firing the only person with root access to their financial disaster insurance vault wasn't a power move, but corporate arson. That same afternoon, Carter announces in a company-wide Slack thread that the transition from Monica's legacy infrastructure is going smoothly and that Bryce will be spearheading optimization efforts going forward. Someone posted a balloon emoji. Another replied with a gif of a guy high-fiving himself. Me. I copied my exit logs into a private archive, encrypted it with a timestamp, and uploaded it to my lawyer's cloud storage with the subject line, "In case they lie, because they would." Wasn't just disbelief anymore. It was insult. A slow, itchy, smoldering insult that sat just under my skin and buzzed like a live wire. I had warned them. I had handed them a parachute. They cut it up and used it as printer paper. And the worst part, they didn't even know the plane was falling yet. I pictured Carter standing in the server room with Bryce, both of them staring at a blinking terminal, sweat soaking through their company-branded polos, uttering something about firewalls like it was an exorcism spell. Meanwhile, offshore, my machines were humming like sleeping dragons. Quiet, untouchable, obedient only to a mistress they just buried under an HR memo. I didn't reply to their silence. I just watched like a scientist watching a petri dish sprout mold after someone ignored the warning label. The countdown had already started. The meltdown began at 3:12 a.m. on a Wednesday Eastern Standard Time. I wasn't awake for it, but the alert logs were. Sync error, primary node write failure, then local data corruption detected, backup attempt failed. Then a long panicked silence, the kind you get right before the dam bursts. I found out around 7:30, sipping burnt resort coffee from a paper cup while watching a seagull fight a plastic bag. My inbox was still quiet, but my signal scanner lit up like a Christmas tree. Mirrored server pings from corporate had started increasing overnight like ants clawing at a sealed jar. Failed attempts back-to-back from multiple IPs, all unauthorized. I didn't interfere. I observed. They tried Luxembourg first, probably because it had the pretty interface. But without the access key stored on my physical UBI key and tied to my old 2FA token, the system locked them out after 3 failed attempts. Then came Iceland, which triggered a passive defense protocol after being accessed from a New Jersey IP. Nova Scotia didn't even respond. That one was configured to go dark the moment it smelled desperation. By 8:03 a.m., Carter's email arrived. One line, no greeting. Can you send the credentials for the offshore mirrors? This is time sensitive. Like my father's funeral wasn't. Like my vacation, my first in 5 years was negotiable, but this was urgent. I didn't reply, not to be cruel, but because I'd already offered the keys back when I wasn't being treated like a malware pop-up. They had their chance at a graceful exit. Now we were firmly in consequences territory. Back at corporate, the finance audit had kicked off. Quarterly compliance checks, due diligence docs, investor statements, all tied to a sync pipeline that now fed them corrupted gibberish. The local servers, cheap and rushed after I'd been cut, weren't just unstable, they were toast. One directory had overwritten itself in a loop until it was 83 gigabytes of zeros and error flags, like a screaming infant chewing through its own tongue. And guess where the only clean copies were? Investor relations started sending inquiries. Not panic yet, just the whiff of it. Can we get confirmation of document integrity? Q2 submitted in alignment with SEC protocol. Can we verify retention timelines for audit? Carter, for all his bravado, had no answers. Just a bright-shaped shadow running around like a meth squirrel, checking Ethernet cables like they held moral salvation. Someone on the board finally asked aloud what Carter refused to think. Did we ever confirm credential continuity during Monica's departure? Imagined Carter blinking like he'd just been slapped with a fish. Then another email pinged me. This one from the CTO. Hey, Monica. Not sure if you've seen Carter's note. We're in a bit of a bind. Just looking for the offshore login chain. No drama. Appreciate it. No drama. That's what they called it now. Firing me mid-vacation, ignoring my handover, pretending I didn't architect the whole damn scaffolding they were standing on. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Could have written back something scathing, something poetic and devastating. But I didn't. I simply archived the email, added it to my legal folder, and got up to refill my coffee. Let 'em sweat. Let the questions pile like garbage bags in a heat wave. I'd warned them. I'd offered the map out of the forest. Now they were deep in the trees, and the wolves were just starting to howl. The first real sign of panic came not in an email, but in a typo. Someone forwarded me an internal message sent from Carter to legal, accidentally CC'd to the old facilities distribution list that no one had updated since the pandemic. Subject line, Monica's sabotage with a question mark. Like he wasn't accusing me, just pondering, floating the idea like a weather balloon made of litigation. Inside was a slurry of half-facts, bold claims, Carter's signature blend of plausible deniability and dumbassery. We can't access the offshore mirrors, and she was the only one with control. I'm not saying it was deliberate, but if it walks like sabotage, I walked all right out of their infrastructure and into legal insulation. My inbox lit up after that. One from the interim CIO, Monica, please confirm whether you've made any unauthorized changes to the offshore systems. Legal has been advised. One from HR, hilariously out of sync. We'd like to schedule a quick chat to ensure you've returned all company property, digital or otherwise. And one that got forwarded from an old tech vendor rep who thought I should know what's going around. It was a message chain between Carter, the CTO, and someone from their insurance liability team. If she's not cooperating, we may need to initiate external review or law enforcement consultation. That was the one moment my stomach dropped, then locked into place like steel. I stopped sipping wine on the beach. I stopped laughing at their flailing. I put down the pina colada, picked up my phone, and dialed someone who still owed me a favor. Her name was Erin Dolan. Civil litigator. Iron spine, voice like a kindergarten teacher who sues billionaires for fun. She didn't even let me finish explaining before she said, "Forward me everything, and don't reply to anyone." I didn't. Not a word. I ghosted harder than Bryce after a failed Jenkins deployment, but I watched, and I documented every email, every Slack message, every login attempt from corporate IPPS pinging my personal firewall. I screen recorded terminal logs, cataloged timestamps, mirrored their own error reports against my backup verification snapshots. I created a digital paper trail so airtight it could survive on Mars. Then I encrypted the whole thing and uploaded it to 2 separate cloud safes, one labeled, "Oh no, you don't," and the other just Carter's career. Because let's be clear, I hadn't sabotaged anything. I hadn't altered a single key, deleted a single file, or triggered any manual failsafe. The system was running exactly as designed, intentionally complex, aggressively secure, and totally dependent on the one thing Carter tossed like day-old sushi, me. Meanwhile, we're trying to spin it. Carter started planning whispers on internal calls. Monica was stressed. She didn't take the restructure well. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Someone in legal asked if I had a documented history of mental health issues. That one got forwarded to Aaron, who immediately flagged it as a HIPAA-adjacent violation. And still, I said nothing. Silence was louder than denial. I didn't need to scream. I needed them to unravel. He thought they were tightening a noose. They didn't realize they were pulling it around their own neck. The dam cracked on a Thursday. A senior investor, someone with enough shares to make Carter sweat through his synthetic button-down, sent an ultimatum to the board. I want a live demo of full backup recoverability. No slide decks. No simulations. Live today. The CTO, bless his panicked little heart, tried to stall, coughed up excuses like hairballs. We're undergoing infrastructure optimization. We're running a deep scan for malware interference. We're currently performing system validation with our internal stakeholders. It was the corporate version of saying your dog ate your homework while your dog actively pisses on your Wi-Fi router. Word spread through the company like cheap perfume at an HR mixer. People weren't whispering anymore. They were forwarding chat logs, emails, memos, and then someone, an operations exec who hadn't spoken to me since the company holiday party where she told me I seemed intense, sent me a screenshot. It was from Carter, dated 3 weeks before my firing. We don't need redundancy. Monica overbuilds everything. Let's just simplify and move fast. She's paranoid about backup structure. Like we're hiding state secrets that age like milk left in a rental car trunk. The board saw it did legal. So did the compliance consultant that quietly brought in under the radar, hoping to proactively assess damage control. The guy took one look at the offshore sink pipeline failure and muttered, "Who signed off on this?" Carter did with his whole chest. Emergency meetings started stacking like a Jenga tower with caffeine tremors. Calendar invites titled Urgent Infra Failures, Backup Audit Review. My personal favorite, action plan if Monica doesn't cooperate. Meanwhile, I was still silent, still sipping tea, watching the drama unfold like a Netflix series written just for me. But the vindication didn't feel like victory. Not yet, because they hadn't hit bottom. Not while they still thought they could out-talk their way through it. Not while Carter believed this could be solved with a PR campaign and a strongly worded LinkedIn post about learning from adversity. I knew better. I knew that under the surface of their broken backups and server rot, something darker was sleeping. Something they didn't think anyone would find because no one was supposed to have that kind of access, except, of course, me. So I waited, patient, focused, not out of fear, but precision. They had started a fire. I had all the oxygen. Carter's desperation finally developed a heartbeat. It arrived in my inbox with the subject line, "Let's work together, open to discussion." Classic Carter. When charm failed, he'd coded in vague professionalism and hoped no one noticed the stench of fear underneath. The body of the email read like a Hallmark card from a gaslighter. "Monica, while we may have had communication breakdowns, I want to extend an olive branch. Like to offer you a consulting fee to help us reorient the offshore systems and ensure audit compliance. No hard feelings. We just want to put the past behind us. Translation, help us clean up our own incompetence with your unpaid trauma, and we'll throw you a few bones to pretend we're still in control." There was one line that made me laugh so hard, I nearly choked on my tea. "Think of this as an opportunity to heal and collaborate." Heal. Tried to hang me out to dry, floated criminal charges, and now I was supposed to show up like a magical IT fairy and fix the kingdom they burned down. No, but I didn't ignore it either. I took my time crafting the response, not to Carter, but to the world. I posted it on LinkedIn. Just a simple, measured reflection. Boundaries matter, especially in tech, where work-life lines blur and loyalty is often exploited. I was fired during a family bereavement for refusing to log in while scattering my father's ashes. I said nothing. When I was accused of sabotage for system I built and offered to hand over, I still said nothing. Today, I was offered a consulting fee to help clean up the mess I was blamed for causing. I declined. Respect isn't retroactive. To those building the next generation of infrastructure, document everything. Protect yourselves. Never mistake silence for weakness. No names, no accusations, just truth. The post went viral in 12 hours. Tech Circle shared it like wildfire. Women in STEM, burnout survivors, DevOps veterans. Even 2 ex-colleagues who once called me uptight posted heart emojis and flame gifs in the comments. Carter didn't respond directly, but suddenly, his LinkedIn went quiet. His posts about resilient leadership disappeared. Of his old keynote videos where he bragged about slashing IT redundancy by 60% was mysteriously removed from YouTube. Behind the scenes, Erin was already sharpening knives. She had compiled a harassment log from all the emails I received, thinly veiled threats, blame shifting, post-termination demands. She called it Exhibit a Gaslight Parade. Then came the defamation prep. Every whisper they floated. Every "when maybe she did it" Slack comment. Every claim of mental instability they dropped in meetings, logged, watermarked, cross-referenced with timestamps. "You've got enough here to bury a mid-size firm," Erin said, not even looking up from her notes. "We're not asking. We're telling." And yet, I still didn't pull the trigger because I knew one more domino was wobbling. Just one. And when it fell, the whole thing would collapse under its own weight. The kind of collapse you don't recover from, so I waited. One foot in fire. Other on the gas pedal. Empowered, armored, ready. Because the mess wasn't just technical, it was criminal, and they had no idea I had proof. The message came from an old acquaintance in investor relations, the kind of guy who never answers your birthday text but magically reappears when a ship starts sinking. "Just a heads up. 2 institutional investors pulled their money this morning. Quietly, SEC has started sniffing around. Internal inquiry for now. Stay that way." He didn't say more. Didn't have to. I knew what it meant, and more importantly, I knew why. It wasn't just the audit failure anymore. Wasn't just the backups rotting in encrypted limbo. It was what lay inside those backups, things even Carter probably didn't fully understand. Because that's the thing about arrogance. It makes you sloppy with secrets. Those offshore mirrors weren't just cold storage for financial logs and compliance paperwork. We're also holding encrypted internal review snapshots, weekly roll-ups I'd programmed to run automatically, archiving invoice chains, expense reports, and the delta logs between public and private statements. It wasn't something I advertised. I built it years ago after watching Carter manually adjust a vendor ledger to fit the quarter's narrative. I hadn't planned to weaponize it, but it was there, quiet, waiting. The firm went live with its Q2 results the year prior. Something in the numbers didn't add up. I remember reviewing them thinking, we didn't close that many contracts, but I shrugged, gave them the benefit of the doubt. Now I dug into the old logs, decrypted one mirror, and compared the internal vs external books. Quarter after quarter, same pattern. Duplicate invoices, ghost clients, deferred liability buried under projected equity, surgical fraud dressed up in pivot tables. They weren't just careless. They were cooking the books. I should have been shocked, but what I felt was colder than that pure distilled clarity. Carter didn't fire me out of ego. He fired me to remove a variable he couldn't control. The offshore backups were never just backups, they were a mirror, and he knew what they'd reflect. That night, I pulled one of the local encrypted drives from my private archive. It pulled in my handwriting, Monica R. Offshore sync log 020317 UTC mirror packet. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I placed it in a small padded case, drove to Erin's office, and slid it across her desk like a dealer laying down a royal flush. She didn't ask what was on it. She just looked at the label, whistled low, and said, "Do I want to open this before or after I forward it to the SEC?" I just shrugged. Flip a coin? We both knew this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice, or maybe something dirtier: correction. The kind of systemic karma corporate lawyers have nightmares about. Carter had hollowed out the company to make quarterly numbers dance. Now those numbers were about to hang him by the tie he wore on CNBC. And me, I felt nothing. No rage, no glee, just a sharp, focused stillness. The truth was no longer mine to carry. Now it belonged to the federal government. The hearing room was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, though the AC did with that sterile bureaucratic chill, but in energy. Like, even the walls knew something was dying in there. The SEC officials didn't waste time with small talk. They flipped through binders, clicked through timestamps, scrolled past reams of logs I provided, encrypted packets, internal discrepancies, chat transcripts, access warnings, the works. Every breadcrumb Carter thought he'd swept under the rug, I'd labeled, watermarked, and gift-wrapped with forensic precision. When they asked me to speak, I did it simply. No dramatics, just facts. My voice steady, clear, surgical. I offered to hand off the infrastructure. They declined. I warned about the lack of redundancy. They ignored it. The offshore mirrors operated as designed. What they found inside, that's on them. One regulator, mid-50s with a brow like a hatchet, looked up and said, "You built a better compliance system than half the Fortune 500. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I just said, I was trying to protect them from themselves. The final report landed 2 weeks later. Carter terminated with cause. The CTO resigned, pending investigation. Head of finance retired early, escorted out midday with her Herman Miller chair still warm. The board issued a limp public apology of phrases like regrettable oversight and lessons learned. Their stock cratered by 32% in a week. One investor posted a single emoji to his timeline. Fire. As for me, I was cleared of all accusations officially, quietly, thoroughly. Erin called me that Friday just as I was packing my suitcase for much less funeral-adjacent vacation. "You're bulletproof," she said, tapping her desk with a pen. Also, someone from Mavenker called. You know them. Mavenker, the rival firm. The one Carter used to mock in strategy meetings like they were JV. The one whose tech stack I always admired from afar because they actually funded their infrastructure team instead of trying to seduce interns with beanbags and LaCroix. They offered me a full-time role, Director of Systems Architecture. Double my old salary, full remote, no Carter, and stock. When I walked into their downtown office for orientation, yes, I wanted the first-day moment. I passed a glass-walled conference room where 2 engineers were whiteboarding something about server resiliency. Framed on the wall in simple black serif was a quote, "Respect is cheaper than recovery." I stopped and just stared at it. 10 words that would have saved Carter a company. I stepped into my new office, closed the door, opened my laptop. No Slack pings, no guilt-laced emails, no desperation disguised as outreach, just silence. And for the first time in years, it wasn't empty. It was earned. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.